Welcome to everyone who's joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're so happy to have you here for day 3 of Stormwater Awareness Week. It's going to be a great event. We can't wait to hear from Karen and her fantastic workshop. So good morning. I'm going to hand it over to Karen here because we want to make sure she has the full hour to present. So it looks like it is right around 7 o'clock Pacific time, which is 10 o'clock Karen's time in the East Coast. So Karen, thank you so much for being Stormwater Awareness Week presenter.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's a great opportunity for us. Glad to have everybody here and looking at this topic, and so grateful for everything that I've been learning this week. I hope that you all are getting as much out of this as I've been getting. So getting started with this topic, looking at ways to help you as an industrial person, as maybe you've got a facility, maybe you've got several facilities, looking at ways that you can keep pollutants from getting into the environment. And one of the main reasons that these things do happen is because we have leaks, we have spills, we have issues that cause those particles or particulate to get out of containers or get out of containment, or we've got fluids that migrate. They again get out of wherever they have come from and get into storm drains, get into floor drains, and make their way into our navigable waters. So looking first at where these things happen. Of course, we have leaks and spills, most often where we have fluids or where we've got particles stored. So, what are those areas? And these may not apply to every single person. Not all of these will apply to every single facility, but these are the most common areas where we find leaks and spills happening. And the first one is fluid dispensing areas. So, think about the last time that you put gas into your vehicle. When you took the nozzle out of the gas tank and you're putting it back, what did you do? You instinctively kind of tipped it up so that you wouldn't have the drips going from your gas tank back into the pump holding area. So that's something that we do instinctively. Not everybody does that, granted, because look at the ground around a fluid dispensing area, any kind of gas station, and you'll notice that people have leaked and dripped there. Those same things happen within our facility as we're fueling fleet vehicles or we're fueling equipment, whatever that may be in those fuel areas. We do have those leaks and drips. If we don't have a way to take care of those, if we don't have a way to maintain them, those leaks are eventually going to make their way into the nearest storm drain. So fuel dispensing area is a big one. Usually we don't see a lot of things happening there. Most people are pretty diligent about keeping those tanks and keeping that equipment up to date so that we don't see a lot of huge fuel spills at a lot of areas, but they do happen. And again, an area that we need to be prepared for either that bigger spill or just those little drips that migrate over time. The next area is looking at fleet vehicles and saddle tanks. I am a trained hazmat responder. I've been a hazmat technician for about 30 years now. And this is something that I get called out for a lot of times to clean up the mess, the fuel from a saddle tank spill. And quite often it's happening when it's raining. So this is something that you get that 30 to 60 gallons from the saddle tank. They graze along the side of an embankment, or they go too close to a curve, whatever the case may be. Saddle tanks they're out there, they're out in the open, and it's very easy to get a leak and a spill happening from those. So look at your fleet vehicles. Are there ways that you can guard those saddle tanks? Are there ways that you can make sure that your facility is friendly to those? They don't have the ability to graze along something and get that leak, get that spill going within your facility. Another one is hydraulics. And hydraulics, think about everything that you've got within your facility. Maybe it's a fixed facility or you've got a mobile facility. Maybe you do outdoor work, whatever that case may be. A lot of things rely on hydraulics in order to function. We had an instance where I was working for a company and we had called in a contractor to do some refurbishment within the facility, and they had a small skid steer. And as it would happen, it was raining one morning and the skid steer had a hydraulic line that broke. And of course, as soon as it broke, the oil was released, the hydraulic fluid was released, and immediately went across the parking lot fortunately into a swale where we were able to collect it before it continued down and went into a small river that was nearby the facility. But something that we didn't expect, something that technically the facility wasn't responsible for, but it did happen at the facility, and that contractor really wasn't prepared to handle that hydraulic spill. So think about the different things that run on hydraulics within your facility. Are they fixed? Are they mobile? Are they something that you can contain and control quickly? Are they something that's really going to make a mess for you if that hydraulic system does fail? And we know that sometimes those things, even with preventative maintenance, they can be a little bit unpredictable. So look at those places where you do have hydraulics within your facility or within your systems and mark them, identify them so that you can be prepared to handle the leaks and spills when they do happen. The next area is bulk storage tanks. And many people have tanks outside, above ground storage tanks, underground storage tanks. Maybe you only get things in totes. Maybe you only get things in drums. Whatever those storage areas are, what do they look like? How are they cared for? How are they maintained? Do you have secondary containment for them? Do you have a way to prevent a catastrophic loss from any of these? Now, chances are, if they're maintained and in good condition, those catastrophic losses are few. However, we can't really always predict the weather. We can't always predict an earthquake. I live in Pennsylvania, as Rebecca mentioned, and for the first 25 years of my career, I didn't really have to worry about earthquakes. It wasn't something that happened in Pennsylvania until one happened. And now that was something that we had to look at a lot of different um, responses to that, and we had to update plans to be prepared for earthquakes. Again, they didn't happen very often, and they haven't happened since, but because we did have that occurrence, it was just something that we hadn't planned for and something that we hadn't really identified as a potential source for leaks and spills. So this was something that caused us to review our plans. So when you look at storage tanks, or really your plants in general, when you are reviewing natural disasters and things that could happen, we all know that weather events are happening more frequently, natural disasters are happening more frequently. How does that possibly change the way that you may store things or countermeasures that you may need to take in order to ensure that if something does fail, that leak or spill is not going to be able to get into the environment? The next one are leaky pipe fittings. Pipelines are notorious for having couplers and having connections that leak and drip over time. I've had a lot of great opportunities to work with pipeline companies that are doing a fantastic job of maintaining their pipelines. They have them pigged every quarter or even more frequently to make sure that they have the integrity that they need. But we all know that from time to time, fittings are going to fail. We rely on the seals, we rely on valves, we rely on those different things, and over time they do need to be maintained. So where could this happen within your facility? Do you have pipelines? Do you have hoses? Do you have things that are going to routinely cause that leak and drip, or that need to be maintained so that they don't cause a failure? And the next one are secondary containment systems. This is one that we can be lulled into a false sense of security. Of course, when a secondary containment system is outside, it's going to fill with rainwater. Over the winter, you're going to have it fill with snow, and eventually that snow is going to melt and it needs to be drained out. So we check the system, we make sure there are no pollutants in it, and then what do? We crack open the drain. We know it's going to take a good long while for that system to drain out, sometimes hours. And nobody's going to sit there and watch that valve for 2 hours or even longer until it is drained out. So what do? We leave it and we intend to come back and close that valve. And sometimes that doesn't always happen. And this is something that regulatory agencies, inspectors look for when they come to facilities. They're going to check that secondary containment system, especially outdoors. They're going to make sure that that valve is closed. So this is something that can trip a lot of people up, because we intend to come back to it. We intend to come back and make sure that that thing is closed. But sometimes it doesn't happen. We get distracted. We get put onto something else. Some other emergency happens, whatever it may be. So make sure that you've got a system in place to check those valves and ensure that they are closed. A lot of places are going to systems where they will actually install an oil water separator that has a self-closing valve on it so that that water can flow through. They don't have to have somebody manning that system. But in the event of a spill, it's going to close itself off. So there is no release into the environment. So that's something that may be an option for you if you do have secondary containment systems outdoors and you're storing petroleum products. There are a lot of great systems that allow that oil water separator to act as your check valve and allow that water to flow through and not allow the water to accumulate. The next one is vehicle and equipment maintenance areas. And in these areas, we know that there are going to be a lot of fluid. So if you've got fleet operations, if you're maintaining your fleets on site, this is an area where you've got oil, you've got petroleum, you've got coolants, probably got some solvents, you've got a lot of different fluids going on. And in fleet operations that are well maintained, chances are those bulk areas are in pristine condition and everything looks great. If they're not, what can you do to make them that way? How can you ensure that your mechanics are operating in those best conditions and that the fluids that they are circulating, so if they're replacing oil, if they're replacing coolants, how are they reclaiming those liquids so that they can be recycled, so that they can be re-refined or whatever you're doing with those liquids that are coming out of your fleet vehicles? Is there a system in place for that? How are they keeping those fluids off the floor and out of drains? Because when you look at a lot of these areas, especially for facilities that have been around for a while, they have the floor drains. And what did we historically do? We flushed everything to those drains. Of course, we can't do that anymore. So what can we do to make sure that the mechanics have what they need and they're able to perform their functions without getting everything into the environment? The next, kind of akin to that, washing and cleaning areas. When we're doing our fleet vehicle washdowns, when we're doing equipment washdowns, maybe it's a process washdown, whatever those cases are, what are we doing to collect those fluids and make sure that those pollutants aren't getting into the environment? Do we have underground sumps? Do we have storage pits? Do we have retention areas? Where is that water, that wash water going? And what is it carrying with it? How can we make sure that we are sending the least amount of things into the environment? What checks do we have in place to do that? And of course, these are areas where, again, maybe not a leak and spill happens, but it is something that we do need to look at and proactively plan for. There are so many stories of wash areas where, especially public ones, where somebody comes in and decides that, okay, I'm just going to change my oil here because they've got a pit and I can just release it. And it can really foul up a system that's designed for just trace amounts of oil to come through it. So what do we have in place to prevent pollution in those areas? The next are loading and unloading areas. And fuel, I chose fuel here because, of course, we see a lot of fuel being transferred. A lot of us have fuel within our operations, and we do receive those fluids in bulk. But what potential pollutants do you have? Are they corrosive? Are they solvents? Are they flammable? What do we have that we're getting in bulk that could enter into the environment? And similar to this, akin to this, where are our fluid transfer areas? Where are we transferring maybe from a tote or a drum or a carboy or a jerry can into a smaller container or into a process? Where are those liquids moving? So anytime that we see those liquids in motion, that is a big potential for a leak and spill. So when the fluids are being transferred either in bulk or maybe even in a small amount, where are those leaks and drips happening? Do we have systems in place so that those leaks and drips are caught? Do we stock those areas with absorbents or paper towels or something so that people can take care of those spills proactively? People are kind of lazy by nature, and if you make them go across the facility to pick up a paper towel so that they can go back and sop up that leak and drip, they're probably not going to do it. If you put those supplies there and then have a collection container for them, they're more likely to pick up after themselves and do that good housekeeping and that little bit of an extra measure to keep those things in check so that they're not being tracked around and they're not entering your drains. The next are waste treatment and storage areas. I recently got to visit a facility that just had an ideal waste collection area. It was the area for their accumulation of hazardous waste as well as universal waste that they had on site. They had everything labeled. The area could be driven into it was a recessed area that could be driven into with the forklift to take all the waste out of the area. And it was just a really ideal situation. But how do our waste areas look? Are they clean? Are they orderly? Are the containers closed in those areas so that we don't have those emissions? And so that if something were to be knocked over, it doesn't leak or spill. How do our waste treatment areas look? Do we store things properly? Are they labeled? Do we know exactly what everything is within that area? Is it being taken care of and recycled or treated in a timely manner? All of those things that kind of fall under RECRA and we may not think about as stormwater people, but those things do accumulate. And if we don't manage them properly, they can end up being pollutants within our stormwater systems. And the last area are raw material piles. And this is for maybe facilities that have those bulk things that are stored outside. Perhaps it is salt for winter operations, or sand, or gravel, or sod, whatever those things may be that we're storing outside. Do we have a way to actively manage them and contain them? It's not a facility story, but I have an elderly neighbor who needs to go for treatment every day. So he has a med van come pick him up. And his yard was just a general yard. He really didn't have a driveway that was paved for the med van to come pick him up. Well, over time, of course, with the rain, it developed a big muddy patch, and the med van couldn't get in and out because it would get stuck in the mud. So the gentleman's solution was to bring in 4 tons of shale to put into and basically shale his entire front yard so that the med van would get stuck in the mud. So he had that all graded out and everything. And in the first rainstorm that came through, I had never really realized how much a rain event could make that shale travel. And at the end of the day, after the storm had passed, there were actually about 6 wheelbarrow loads of shale that had been dislodged from his front lawn and into the street. So it was probably about equivalent to maybe a 55-gallon drum and a half of shale that had been dislocated from just one rainstorm. So that was just 3 tons of shale. Think of how much we may have at our facilities outside and how much that, especially if it had been soil or sand or something of that nature, can migrate. Do we have containment systems around these areas? Do we have berms around these areas? What physically can we put in the way so that those raw materials are staying exactly where we think they are and they aren't migrating to the nearest drain or to the nearest vegetated area and creating problems for us? So now that we've identified the areas that we can have problems. And again, look for those fluids. Where are fluids being transferred? Where are fluids being stored? Where do we have those things stored? Because those are your big areas that the leaks and spills can occur. And once those spills occur, they're making their way to those floor drains and to those storm drains and getting into the environment. So what can we do to minimize the potential for those releases? And there are a lot of great engineered systems out there. There are a lot of great ways that I have seen this week and have seen before that we can engineer solutions into those systems. But I really want to look at some things that are low cost and that we may already be doing. Chances are you may be doing some of these already. And if you are, that's great. If not, maybe a few new ideas that you can incorporate to help keep those leaks and spills in check, maybe prevent them from happening in the first place so that they're not getting into the environment. And the first one is preventative maintenance. Think for a minute of things that you do at home. For example, when I do the laundry, before I put clothes in the dryer, I clean out the lint trap. It doesn't cost me a cent to do that, but I know that by doing that, I'm going to get a longer life out of my clothes dryer. I'm going to have greater efficiency. The clothes are going to dry faster. I'm going to use less energy in doing that. Cost me nothing but about 20 seconds to clean out that lint trap and keep the clothes dryer going. Likewise, I've got a gas furnace in my home with forced air. And when the technician installed the furnace, he told us that if we change out the filter every month, we will get 7 to 10 more years out of our furnace than if we don't do that. So every month, I've got it set up. $1.59 for a filter. It takes me about 3 minutes. So a little more of an investment, $1.59 a month, but it's going to buy me 7 to 10 years on that furnace. I drive a lot for work, so my oil gets changed every 3 months. And that's a little more expensive. That's about $50 every 3 months that I'm spending for an oil change. But while the car is there, I have a great mechanic and he checks the tires, he checks the brakes, he checks the lights, he checks all the other fluids, and he does all those little maintenance tasks to keep the car going. My last car went 250,000 miles because I kept going with that maintenance because I did those things to keep the vehicle in the best condition that it could be to keep it running. And so those are things that I do at home. One costs nothing but about 20 seconds of time cleaning that lint trap in the dryer. One a little more expensive for that routine oil change. But they were those little things that keep those things that I rely on running at home. So what do we do at work with the things that need to have that preventive maintenance? Maybe it's a backup generator. Maybe it is your fleet of vehicles, pipelines, operational systems, process systems. What are all of those things that when they break down, it really causes a problem for you? So chances are you may already have preventative maintenance on a lot of them. If you don't, what can you do to improve those things? Because the more we schedule those things and do those preventative maintenance tasks, the less likely they fail on us and the less likely they are to be sources of leaks and spills that are getting into drains and causing problems for us with polluting the environment. One thing I will mention here is a lot of people will outsource their preventative maintenance. For example, I worked for a company that had backup power generators, and we outsourced their maintenance because none of us were really skilled in doing the preventative maintenance tasks for those backup generators. And I kind of took for granted that they did that. But then we had an audit and it made me realize, and the auditor said, well, what were the results of those routine maintenance, preventative maintenance inspections? And I really didn't know. We got the bill, we paid the bill, and we never really had accounted for what they were doing in the forms of preventative maintenance. Were they replacing seals? Were they catching leaks and drips? We really didn't know. So we actually changed our contract to kind of give an account for all of the tasks that they were performing so that we knew what was going on with those machines. We knew when seals were replaced. We knew when they had found a leak or a drip within a system. We knew when the different hoses were replaced, and we hadn't thought to really do that before. So if you do have contracts, ask the contractor if they will provide you with a list of the tasks that they perform, so that you know how that piece of equipment or that vehicle or whatever you're under contract with is performing and is holding up. You know how resilient those hoses are going to be. You know when those valves have been replaced so that you have a better understanding of their likelihood of failure. Whatever those systems may be that you have those contracts for, or whether you're doing it yourself, keep track of those things so that you've got that running tally of how things are going and when things may need to be replaced so that you don't have the breakdowns, you don't have the leaks and spills from them. Akin to it, doing your routine inspections. And this may be outlined for some of these things within different regulations. So within your SWIP, you may have intervals for inspections on storage areas, or you may have inspections for your fueling areas. If you've got an SPCC plan for large bulk oil storage and bulk fuel storage, you may need to do inspections on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Look at the requirements within your plans. What do they say? If you don't have inspections for any of these areas for whatever reason, consider adding them. And the inspections can be simple. They can be simply looking at the equipment and making sure that you don't see a visible leak or spill around it. They could be an inspection that involves a little bit more. Maybe you are looking at seals quarterly, or you're looking at valve fittings, or you're checking and replacing things. Whatever makes sense for your facility, again, based on that preventative maintenance schedule, based on what historically you may know within your facility and things that have happened in the past. What needs to be inspected, and what can you do to help ensure that these areas are taken care of, and you aren't going to have any problems within them that's going to cause a leak or a spill. And finally, the final area is good housekeeping. And good housekeeping is something that we often overlook, but it's a solution to so many problems that we have within our facilities. I have talked, I've spoken with a lot of regulatory inspectors, and when they come to a facility, I've been told time and time again that if your house is in order, if you've got a great good housekeeping program, if your facility looks neat and clean, your inspection is going to go a lot better. They know that they don't have to dig into every nook and cranny because you've taken the time to set your house in order. You've taken the time to make sure that there isn't a clutter everywhere, that there isn't a mess, that there aren't things around that look unsightly. So consider good housekeeping. It's something that can take as little as 5 minutes a day. And if you build that into your routines, if you build that into your workday, it's something that can really help for your production. It can really help improve production. It'll help with safety, and it'll help with your environmental compliance because you're not going to have all those messes causing those problems for you. So I mentioned here improving sight lines. If you've got your storage areas well kept, you don't have things in aisles, you don't have people backing into them, you don't have people creating leaks and spills because they've run over something that they couldn't see because a mess was there, or because they didn't have the sight line, the things were stacked too high, whatever that may be. So look at those sight lines. Can people see where they're going? Can people see where they're driving, so that you don't have those incidents of people creating a mess that way? Time savings because people aren't hunting for the things that they need. Good housekeeping can also be making sure that you've got a resilient stock rotation system, that you're moving your raw materials through with the oldest first and the newest last. And your stock rotations, making sure again you're getting the product out in the order that it was created, so that you don't generate that waste that sits around and again has that potential for leaks and spills. Most containers have a pretty good integrity to them, and you don't see a lot of containers failing just within normal use. But if you've got those things that have been hanging around for a while, you've got those areas where, okay, this was used for an operation or a process 10 years ago, and we've just never bothered to get rid of it. Take that time now to go through and look at those areas, get them cleaned up so that you don't have something lurking in a back corner that's eventually going to cause that leak or spill for you. Other good housekeeping things: sweeping and vacuuming, getting those particles off the floor, which by whichever method makes sense for your facility. The more we can get off the floors, off the ground, off the pavement, out of the parking lots, out of our paved areas, the less that's entering those drains, the less that's getting into the environment. Keeping the trash collected. Again, if it's collected, it's not going over there. It's not entering any sensitive areas. Keeping dumpsters closed. This one's important because most dumpsters are not completely sealed. They've got holes in them. They've got ways for things to get out of them. When we keep the lids closed, then rain and snow doesn't get in there, and it doesn't let those liquids leach out and get free. Keeping our recycling done, and having places for each item. Making sure that, I know storage is a premium at pretty much any facility I've ever been in. One thing that everybody wishes for is more storage. I worked for a facility that built a brand new warehouse, and they built it 25% bigger than they ever anticipated needing. And within 4 years, all of that space had been filled. So we know that storage comes at a premium, but do we have a place for everything to be? Do we have a place that it lives so that we can find it quickly, so we can find it easily, and so that we know where it is and it's not somewhere else getting bumped or tattered and worn and creating those leaks and spills. Another thing that we can do is look for areas that routinely leak and drip. I've been doing this for 30 years, and something that I've heard all of those 30 years is if it's not leaking, it's not running. If it's not running, I'm not creating a product. I'm losing business. So what are those things within your facility that do have those persistent leaks and drips? Things that if it's not leaking, it's not running kind of a situation. Do you have any of those? What are those things? Is it a piece of equipment? Is it a valve? Is it a fitting? Is it a hydraulic system? Is it a pump? What is it and where does it leak? And what can you do to capture that leak right where it is before it runs across a parking lot, before it runs across your floor, wherever that whatever that situation may be? Where is it and what can I put under it? What kind of a drip pan can I use to capture that, recycle those fluids, and make sure that they're not getting into a storm drain? Another area is looking at placement for secondary containment berms. This might be in a storage area with drums, it might be in bulk storage, it might even be equipment. I recently worked with a very large company. They do waste hauling, both residential and industrial residual wastes, and they had a fleet of more than 800 garbage trucks. And garbage trucks have hydraulics on them. They're uh, kind of big, hulky machines, and they just routinely leak. Well, unfortunately, not unfortunately, they happen to be located in the Chesapeake Bay region, and they were coming under scrutiny because, of course, everything leaked. And although they were able to park all of their equipment on paved areas, those leaks were, of course, getting into the environment because the leak would migrate every time it rained into the drains. And they were working on systems. They had oil water separators, but they weren't able to keep up with the volume of leaks and spills. And they actually ended up creating an area that had secondary containment so that all of the leaks and drips that were coming from those vehicles, the large trash trucks, were contained and retained, and they were able to separate the free oil before it went through their oil water separator and make it more efficient. So think of it not only for containers, but also for anything that may be in your fleet. Is there a way that you can contain an area and prevent oil, particulate, whatever else is coming off of that equipment, vehicle, or whatever it may be, from entering the environment? And quite often, this doesn't mean creating a big, large concrete system like the secondary containment berms that we traditionally see. This could be an earthen berm. This could be as simple, maybe it's a temporary storage situation, and this may be as simple as putting down a tarp and putting some sandbags around the edges to create that small pole and keep that area contained until we can find a more permanent solution. Or for the season, if it's something that we don't routinely do, or maybe it's a temporary situation and we only need this area for a couple of months. There are a lot of portable secondary containment systems that are prefabricated now that you can purchase for those things and then fold up and store until you need them again the next season. Whatever that case may be, look for those opportunities to create that system, keep those pollutants, whatever they may be, particulate or liquid, keep them out of the environment and keep them away from the drains. Fueling areas. We talked about these a little bit earlier. How often do we ignore those little drips that are coming from the fuel handle? What can we do to make those areas better? Can we put some absorbents in that area? Can we look for ways to clean those up quickly before they get embedded into the concrete or asphalt below? Looking at ways to help your drivers. Don't let them top off. It's something that we know doesn't help fuel efficiency, and it's again, every time we top off, it's more likely that we're going to have those small leaks and drips. Removing the locking devices from any kind of fuel dispenser so that people are more attentive while they are fueling up their vehicles. They have the opportunity to pay attention and not run away from the device, go get a coffee or whatever. They actually have to be active and involved in the process. So again, they're going to be the first ones there when that container overfills or that vehicle overfills. And they're going to be able to respond in a more timely manner, keep that spill small instead of something that is a little more catastrophic and it's going to take a lot more time to clean up. If you store things outdoors, are there ways that you can do it so that they're not exposed to the elements? Can you put it in an area that has a cover? Can you put it on that, as I mentioned before, that secondary containment system that's maybe portable or temporary? Can we keep things consolidated into one area so that we don't have them spread out over the entire yard? They're consolidated and you're able to facilitate putting that cover over them, or put, even if it's a tarp, what are those things that we can do to make sure that whatever is stored outside isn't exposed to the elements, isn't getting rained on, isn't releasing whatever may be in or around the machine into the environment, or in around the equipment or raw materials and getting into the environment? Are there ways that we can look for infiltration or diversion? Can we put in a detention pond, a retention pond, a a swale? Is there something that we can do so that if we do get a small amount of pollution entering, we've got a place that it goes before it's discharged? I mentioned earlier the contractor who had the skid steer, and we were able to capture everything in the swale before it got to the big drain and entered the small river. So is there an area where you can do that? Is there an area that isn't paved that you can turn into a retention or detention area and channel all of your outdoor fluids there so that you've got kind of that next step before it would be discharged? It's easier to clean up that small area than to try to clean it up once it gets into the river. Are we managing our snow piles? This in the Northeast, where we're starting to look at things chilling down, and we could literally have snow at any point now. So are there ways that we're managing our snow? This is a picture that I took at an industrial facility, and this was in February. So what you see there in the snow pile is a lot of anti-slip that had been added to the parking lot just to help people with traction. So, and of course, there was probably salt in that pile from the ice melt that had been added to keep the parking lot safe. But you can see there's a lot of particulate there. And where's that particulate going to go? To that nearest drain if we don't have some way to stop it. So in this case, the snow is probably going to melt. And then what are we going to do with all of that particulate that's there? Do we have a plan in place? Do we have a procedure to go out and sweep or vacuum that up so that it doesn't eventually migrate into that drain? If we can get it on the pavement, if we can capture that pollutant before it enters the drain, it's a lot easier to do than getting into the bottom of that drain and trying to muck all of that out. So what can we do with all of the things that we manage from the snow to keep them from entering that drain? And this could be extra ice melt, this could be sand, this could be, again, that anti-skid. What are those things we're using to manage snow that we want to keep out of the drains? And last, storm drain management, just kind of segue from the storm. What else is getting into our storm drains? So this could be in a parking lot, this could be in a storage yard, this could be anywhere that we've got those drains so that we don't have our stormwater pooling within our facilities. Where are those drains? Are they in high traffic areas? Are they in areas maybe that don't receive a lot of traffic? There are a lot of different drain inserts that you can get on the market now, a lot of different suppliers. These are two, full disclosure, that we happen to make to help customers with that, keeping those storm drains managed, keeping those pollutants out. There are filters that will help you capture sediment. There are filters for petroleum products. There are filters for heavy metals. Look for those and look for ways that you can kind of use these as a last ditch effort to make sure that your drains are maintained and that they're easier to maintain. And again, if you can keep those pollutants above grade, they're a lot easier to sweep up. They're a lot easier to vacuum up than if you allow them to get into that storm drain that kind of has to. It's a little more of a hassle to maintain and schlep out every season. So moving from the different techniques that you can use, these different mitigation techniques, we're going to move into a little more about spill preparedness, because we know even with our best efforts, leaks and spills do happen. And the better prepared that we are for those, the better we are able to mitigate them quickly and again, prevent them from reaching those sensitive areas like floor drains or storm drains. So what can we do before release? Look at your site maps, look at your drawings of your facility, look at what you've got on site. And within those things, where are your sensitive areas? Where are your storm drains? Where are your bulk storage areas? What do you know about your facility, and what can you do to put stopgaps in place to prevent those things, prevent the pollutants from getting out? Make sure your people know where they are. Look at these things when you have inspections so that people are familiar with their locations and they know where to go to find different things. Make sure your spill kits, if you've got spill kits, your spill response supplies, where are they? Can people find them quickly? Are they highly visible? What can you do to make them more visible so that people know exactly where to go when they need that absorbent in a hurry? And finally, training. The best plans in the world, the best plans on paper don't do you any good if people don't know what to do. So is everybody at your facility familiar with what they need to do when there is a leak or a spill? And this could be as simple as a sheen that's on the parking lot, cleaning that up quickly so that it doesn't make its way to a swale or to a drain. This could be as something as significant as training your on-site responders to be hazmat responders, hazmat technicians. That's something that a lot of people don't do much anymore. They usually contract that out. But every employee can be trained to recognize leaks and spills and have a procedure in place to either call for help or to take care of those incidental spills that don't pose an emergency and do them quickly. The faster that we can get to them, the more likely we are that they're not going to enter that drain and cause that release that causes us all the reporting issues. So what can we do within our trainings? And this doesn't even have to be its own individual training. These are trainings that could be incorporated into other trainings that you're already doing. Just incorporating those good housekeeping practices and incorporating those quick initial spill response activities into other trainings that you're already doing so that people are aware and you build that awareness of what can be done to prevent that pollution. Wrapping up, I'd like to thank you all again for your time. And again, this is something that anytime that we can prevent a spill, anytime that we can do those small things to prevent a spill from happening, it's going to be better for our facility and better for our environment. And again, I thank you for your time and I welcome any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen. And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat while we wait for any questions to come in. We do have a lot of other great workshops happening today, so be sure to check that out. For you industrial folks, at 10 a.m. Pacific time, that we're going to have one on exploring SPCC plans and hazardous waste management. So that goes hand in hand with this workshop. So you might want to check that one out. So head over to our website to register for that. We also have wet weather, dry weather, and illicit discharges. That's happening in about 15 minutes. And then this afternoon, we're going to have one on improving wetland plant establishment and long-term survival and stormwater control measures. So there's going to be a lot of great workshops. There's construction, industrial, municipal, and just like stormwater general topics. So head over to stormwaterawareness.org to see the full list for today and the rest of the week. It doesn't look like we have any questions, so we might let everyone out a little bit early. It looks like we got just one that popped in. How would you store transformers on an industrial site to prevent stormwater runoff?
Transformers are actually something that I've gotten to deal a lot with. We do a lot of work with utilities, and there are a lot of great resources now. There are, I think, about 6 companies now that are making bags that you actually put the transformer in. So if you can imagine a very large tote bag, you can actually put the transformer into that to provide containment. Nice thing too is a lot of them are rated for shipping. So you can, if the transformer is failing or leaking or whatever, and you do need to ship it, it's actually DOT rated for transport. So that is something that I have found that works really well within those facilities. And one thing to do is look for the ownership of the transformer. That's something that I ran into when I was putting together an SPCC plan, is that quite often the transformer is owned by the utility company versus the facility owner. Yes, it's on your facility, so you still kind of share that responsibility. But work with if it's not yours and the utility owns it, work with the utility to make sure that it is up to date, that it is well maintained, and that you've kind of got a newer one, and one that isn't going to cause you problems. That's something that I know I had to work through, because it was something that I recognized as a potential leak and spill source, and something that I at the time I was working for a company that was well recognized. Of course, they're going to say that yeah, we're the big name and we had a spill, but it's technically not your fault. But we do have to recognize that transformers can cause us problems, and being prepared for them. And like I said, there are a lot of great bags that literally just pop the transformer into to provide that containment and make sure that nothing is going to leak out into the environment.
All right, and we have another question that from the same attendee. How about large garbage uncovered containers? They told me they couldn't find covers.
They couldn't find covers for large. It can be. I know that they say that they can't, but there are covers that you can get, even if you do so much as cover them with a tarp. I know it's not convenient, but check a local company. There are a lot of local companies that will do awnings. So if you start, I would start there and look with a company that makes awnings or does large scale upholstery, perhaps a company that makes boat covers. They can all get you that impervious cover, and basically they can be as simple as a really big shower cap, and just taking that impervious fabric and having that elastic around the edges will help you to cover those large containers. It's best to source those locally. I can't really think of a company nationally that makes those, but I've been able to source them from different. We've got a lot of boat recreation here, and so for us it was a matter of going to the boat manufacturer that makes the covers, and just having them make a cover for us out of the fabric that they use to make the actual boat covers. And that worked really well in that situation. Not ideal, because it is something that takes a little time for people. Best if you have 2 people to put them on and off, but it's at least a solution that will help keep those larger dumpsters covered.
Perfect. And it looks like there's not any more questions in the chat, so we're going to let everyone go a little bit early. But thank you, Karen, so much for presenting, and thank you everyone for attending this Stormwater Where to Speak workshop.